Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Opcast. I'm your host, Beau Higgins, and have the pleasure today to be here with a longtime friend, Marta Sullivan. For those that don't know about the Opcast or Opline provides a service for veterans and military spouses to help them find jobs through matching their information into opportunities and helps companies to actually find veteran and military spouse talent. That's what Opline does. But the Opcast, we like to bring on guests that have just to talk about their transition, how they made that move from the military into the civilian sector. And I think Marta is going to be a great guest today as we learn more about her. So, Marta, great to have you on the program.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I would love to just kind of dig in a little bit about, where it all began for you. I know we do share being UVA grads, although you're a little bit younger, 10 years younger than me. So my hair's a little grayer at this point in time, but we share the Cavalier Wahoo Wah, story. How'd you get into the military? Obviously, for me, I went to UVA and I went to OCS. I had no plan of going to the military at all. What was your path to kind of begin your military journey?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. From high school, I just knew I wanted to go to the University of Virginia, being a Virginian and, having followed that school and loving the school. And my plan was actually to go on to law school. And so at the University of Virginia, it's tough. And I was hoping for a GPA booster, finding some of those, back in the day, we had a card, an actual catalog of classes that you flipped through. Now they don't do that. And I saw this class that looked really interesting. It was naval leadership. And so I thought, I like leadership. Let me check it out. I went, and the first day of class, I was surprised to find all of these college kids in white uniforms, naval professor up front. And so I clearly looked out of place, had no idea what I was doing. And the professor asked me if I knew what I was doing. I said no. And he said, well, you're welcome to stay. And so I did for one class, and it was really fascinating. And so I said, hey, I know I'm not part of NROTC, but the classes are open to anyone. Can I stay? It was a blast. I had sort of had a hard time getting used to the University of Virginia. I didn't join a sorority. I was planning on participating in sports, but I was injured. So I got into the naval leadership class and I thought to myself, Bo, you're going to appreciate this. These are my people. Like, I had so much in common with them. We liked to work out. We were leaders. It was a lot of fun. And I said, well, I could be a lawyer in the Marine. And because out of the naval options, the Marines were the craziest and I liked them the best. So yeah. Yeah. Then I went to OCS, had a blast, dropped the idea of law school, and there I was, graduating and heading off to the basic school.
Is awesome. So you're a straight OCS. You do summers, or did you do after you graduated?
No, I did. I did the summer before my fourth year. I did 10 weeks PLC.
It's funny, and I love that you brought out you got to find your people. I tell it to my kids all the time that are in college. I'm like, you got to find a college where you have your people, and they're probably there. I mean, every college kind of has a lot of different people, but you got to find them. I do remember the catalog of classes, and well, the fraternity house. We were like, what's the easiest class you can take to try to make the A?
My son is there now. He's going into his fourth year, which is really hard to believe. And it was funny because, we're kind of on him about we don't have to be on him about his grades, but he's made Dean's List all 4 years. It's a great school. I'm so proud to be a Virginia alum. But you're right. It is all about the people. And that's what I found in the Marine Corps. And it's been awesome.
100%. I tell my story. If you hadn't heard, I was finishing up my fourth year, second semester, didn't know what I wanted to do, and saw the recruiter standing in front of the bookstore. And went over and started talking to him. I'm like, all my buddies are going to law school and business school, and the economy's kind of crappy back in '89. I'm like, yeah, it's Marine Corps thing. I'll do it for a few years and figure it out. And that was literally how I decided to join the Marine Corps. My dad had been in the Marine Corps, so I kind of had a little bit of influence, but I had no plan till, it was out of the blue. Like, I'm walking back to class one day, like, yeah, sounds good. And then 25 years later, you just never know how it works out. So that's funny.
Never know. You
Yep.
never know.
Well, talk a little bit about your time, and obviously you pivoted from the legal world to join the Marine Corps. I'm sure, I mean, from taking the naval leadership class and getting involved with that, you knew what you were getting into. But did you do stuff with the RTC people, like as an affiliate at all during that time, or how'd that work?
So the funniest thing was, yeah, I mean, I wasn't eligible for a scholarship. So I kind of investigated joining ROTC, but I wasn't eligible for a scholarship because of my sports injury, and I was going to have to get a waiver to get into the Marine Corps because of my knees. So I just kept hanging out with them. They invited me to PT. They invited me to their, OCS prep classes. So imagine, Beau, I went to OCS and I was essentially prepared like a bulldogger. People laugh when I say this, and I don't know if they believe me, but I had a great time at OCS. I was like, this is awesome. Like, you just do what you're told quickly and you work out all the time. Like, this is great. And the chow's not bad. But again, back to the people, right? It was about the people, and I loved leading. And that sort of that told me right there, I said, I don't want to wait until after law school to do this. I want to do it right now. So after joining the Marine Corps, it was always for me, the most fun I ever had was in, platoon commanding, company command, working with groups, leadership challenges. Not all of the leadership challenges were fun,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? And so I actually transitioned into the reserves. I got married, started having kids, and then my husband and I, we had that conversation. And I think for the podcast, for anyone listening who's thinking about post service transition, have the discussion, especially if you're dual active duty, really, why would I have wanted to stay in, and why? What, as Simon Sinek says, start with your why. I loved the people. The war fighting was interesting, of course, but my husband loved the war fighting and the history and the ins and outs. I thought I could get my leadership itch and the people elsewhere. And so I went into the reserves. I finished up with 20 years in the reserves, a combination of active duty in the reserves. And then again, back to the people, Beau. I wanted to be around people like Marines. And so Lieutenant General Schroede, the CEO and president of the Marine Corps Association, offered me a job when my family was transitioning back to Quantico, and snatched it up. And it's been awesome.
That
So
is
there I
pretty
am.
cool.
I'm at the Marine Corps.
Here we are.
There we go.
We're gonna back up a little bit from the story, but it is great, and I love the story of transitioning from the active duty force to the reserve side of the house, and looking at that as a couple, which is just tough. It's obviously very challenging to be dual military, and work through that with kids, and you obviously moved to the reserves and to be able to facilitate some of that. But from your active duty career, so how many years were you active duty, and what are the highlights that you have? I mean, you said basically being in command is the highlight. But is there any moments or times or incidents that kind of stand out from your Marine Corps career?
Oh, yeah, but by far my favorite time in the Marine Corps was being a staff platoon commander at the basic school. I was active duty for 8 years, and then on and off. My reserve career was a little bit non-standard as well. I did a lot of time in the reserves on active duty. I knew the minute I hit the fleet that when I went back, I wanted to go to the basic school. And it was great. I mean, we worked with such phenomenal people. All the fellow instructors were great. And then being around lieutenants, I love lieutenants. Lieutenants are the butt of several jokes, but they're untarnished, they're unjaded, and they're full of energy and excitement. They're what's good about the Marine Corps. I stayed at the basic school for 4 years on active duty. The hilarious stories about being in the field, and so that was a highlight for me.
I have no doubt. I remember my own time as lieutenant, and I can only imagine what the captains and majors thought of this knucklehead Higgins there. I was like totally motivated, but had no idea where I was going. Just going in some direction, and excited about it, but like just really no clue what the heck I'm doing. And I will back up my OCS story, because I came in with no background at all and went straight OCS. I graduated in May and started. I didn't start OCS till February of '90. But I didn't know how to salute. And they don't teach you. Like, you show up to OCS and like all of a sudden you're in. And my first salute was like one of these British things. And they're like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. Nobody taught me this. I knew nothing. I knew zero, like less than nothing. It was pretty sad how little ill prepared I was, but I could run. I gave one of those. I mean, I'd been watching too much Rat Patrol or something. I don't know. And I gave him one of those, and Hogan's Heroes. Yeah,
That's
not
great.
pretty. Didn't go over very well with the of the instructors there, but it is what it is. No, that's pretty funny. And I guess I will ask you though. Obviously, as a military spouse that's in the military, it's a different perspective in some ways. I mean, most military spouses aren't necessarily active duty as well. But I mean, how did you juggle that career? I mean, did it make it easier in some way to have a portable job?
And, I always talk to folks transitioning out of the Marine Corps active duty ranks and say, at least consider staying in the reserves. It is such a good deal. Number one, in when folks transition from active duty, whatever the reason, if they're normally first worried about finding a job, making sure their health is right, and then finding community. And that's kind of what I've noticed in my current job. Like kind of and it was the same for me. But the reserves provided all of that. You still had your career. The only job, think about it, Bo, in the reserves, you can move and transition and you never start over. You're constantly still getting time and grade, time and service. You're still moving up the ranks as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and staying in shape and doing your job. So it's not like I would transition with my husband and then start over at lower management. I keep being promoted. So one, career was taken care of. Two, being on active or being a spouse, I had my health insurance and things like that. But when you're in the service, you take for granted your health benefits and how inexpensive being included in your entitlements that it is. And so that was taken care of. And then the community. I mean, it was fun because I love military spouse. I love being a military spouse. I always joke, I'm a big Marine Corps spouse dork because I love it. But I got to do both. I got to have my Marine friends and I was friends with the Marine Corps spouses. So the reserves was a wonderful blessing for me and it worked out beautifully. It really did. And there were times when I dropped to the IAR. Farrell was a MU commander and that was too much. Like I needed to focus on the kids. I needed to be the stability at home. And so I dropped to the IRR and then I popped back up and really flexible. So anyone listening that is considering transitioning out of active duty, consider the reserves or direct affiliation program.
The point with your spouse as a MU commander, you have a job as the military spouse. That's a job. When your spouse is in command, especially, that's a job of its own. That's a weird combination of things there to try to balance all of that. I think can become overwhelming, especially during that, because it's just a lot.
Well, sure. And I think that's why a lot of spouses nowadays struggle and don't choose to participate deeply or with a lot of commitment as a spouse leader in the unit. We're seeing, back in the day we had the key wives and then it went to family readiness officers, then it went to deployment readiness coordinators. And now we're seeing in another 4 to 5 years, those will go away because of budget cuts. And so I don't think we'll ever go back to a key volunteer structure. We're going to need spouse leaders in the community to form these bonds and the strength of the community that we'll all rely upon once conflict strikes. And that could be conflict abroad or it could be conflict at home, right? We could have a tornado hit in our unit, which happened right in Camp Lejeune, and a tornado struck. So the unit was deployed, tornado struck, tore down 2 houses of Marines in our unit. And anyhow, you need a community and spouse leaders are the ones that can help build it. And it's really, really necessary.
No,
So,
big
yeah.
time. I certainly would not have had the success I had in the Marine Corps without my wife at my side to be able to do all that stuff. And it's just the network, and they need each other. I mean, the spouses need each other. The guys are going to be, or the unit's going to be fine. They have a mission, but to be able to bring that community behind it that is supporting, the deployed, person at the time. You have to have that. Without it, and that's such a key pillar
Oh, I would have
to
lost
your
my
unit's
mind.
success. I mean, it's massive.
Yes.
It's massive. Yeah.
100. I mean, I really would have gone. I don't say this lightly. I would have gone nuts long ago had it not been for the spouse community. And that's why I'm so passionate about giving back because I've received so much support from them personally, from my community, and I want to be able to give back. Yeah.
No, I love it. And again, it's a great example of being able to balance truly a Marine Corps career and being a Marine Corps spouse at the same time. That's a unique path. You threaded that needle in it. And now you're still obviously super connected with the Marine Corps, giving back in a different way. I mean, how did you, what was your first, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but how did you hear about the Marine Corps Association? Again, I was going to say, as a Marine for 25 years, certainly I knew about the Marine Corps Association. To me was, Leatherneck Magazine and the Marine Corps Gazette, and that, at graduation that they would have an award for someone
That's
that
right.
finished first in the class. And that was kind of it. That's pretty bad on me. There was probably more going on that I didn't really know about to me, but that was what you heard about or thought about when you thought of the Marine Corps Association. I know more now, and I just went to a Marine Corps Association dinner, which was great. But only 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I retired, it wasn't what it is today. Certainly. I mean, how did you get initially kind of maybe aware of it, or what was your kind of? I mean, obviously you know about it, but how did you kind of really get plugged into it?
Well, I didn't know about it. And I mean, I knew Gazette and Leatherneck. I mean, basically, Bo, I knew exactly what you're talking about. Back in the day when they would at TBS, you were told you're joining the club, you're joining the association, and you're getting your uniforms at the Marine shop. Like that was
Yep.
it. And you just wrote checks. You wrote checks, bag of the day. So I subscribed to the Gazette. I would read it, look for people I knew and I never received any awards from the association, but I had friends that did. And certainly Farrell has plenty of plaques, and the Leftwich from the association. But I didn't, the truth is I didn't. How I got connected to the association was through Lieutenant General Schrody and my work as a Marine Corps spouse volunteer. I think it was in 17 or 18, we started the USMC PCS Advocacy Council. And at the time, Lieutenant General Schrody was Deputy Commandant for Installation and Logistics. And so I did volunteer work for him. And we started this council. And we really, thanks to the expansion of really smart people, really smart spouses coming after me who took the program and ran with it, made some meaningful change. Service-wide change for PCSs. Anyways, it was great. So this big project we worked on for him was really successful. Fast forward, I moved. We're in the Middle East. We're coming back to Quantico, and his wife and I are friends on Facebook. And Joan Schrody says to Lieutenant General Schrody, "Hey, Marta's coming back. You should see if she wants to," basically she knew he was looking for people. And he sent me, he sent me a Facebook message and said, "Hey, can we talk?" That's it. And I said, "To do what?" And he said, "I need someone to plan modern day Marine." And I said, "You mean that Expo Intense, the
Yeah, out in
Quantico?"
Quantico and Tennessee. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I said, "The association does that?" Really, truly, Bo, I had no idea what I was doing. So I told him no. I said, "I really appreciate it, but at the time I was struggling coming back to the United States, a big PCS. Farrell was about to go to training command in a billet. And so I said, really, thanks. I need to prioritize my kids." And he said, "Well, what if, let's talk." And what he did truly was offer the flexibility in the position to be there for my children, be there for my family, be there for Farrell. And he really worked with me in terms of creating a flexible work schedule. He knows what military spouses need. So anyways, match made in heaven with me and the Marine Corps Association. And from there, he let me go. He let me run. And so I love Modern Day Marine. It was my first big project at the association. And it was at Modern Day Marine when we were talking about spouse employment. And all of all of the woes surrounding military spouse employment, that we realized we could do more. The association could do more in terms of supporting spouses. And you were on the money. The Marine Corps Association has never had it in their mission, I should say, to support anybody else than actively serving Marines. Well, now under Lieutenant General Schrody's leadership, here's moving us in a different direction. He's opening up the aperture and saying, what can we do? Because we know it is about actively serving Marines, but it's about post-service Marines, transitioning into career Marines, and spouses, and how can we serve them? And he looked at me and said, "Well, what can we do?" And I said, "Yes, let's do it."
That's awesome. And I think it's so important. And you hit on the point of, if you want the active duty Marine to be successful, you need their spouse to be successful. Because if their spouse is unhappy, that active duty Marine is probably not going to stay in the military, right? So tapping into things that can help the spouse to be successful truly do help the service as a whole and the Marines, certainly, right? That's why one of the main reasons people get out is not because they don't want to be in the military, it's because their spouse doesn't have a job or they're not happy or whatever it is. But if you look at as the Marine, as his family and everything that comes with that, and can focus on resources to support that, you're much more likely to retain that Marine, keep them happy. The Marine Corps doesn't matter with service, but I think that's something that none of the services that have done a good job of before. It's like, hey, every 3 years you get your orders, you go. That's how we do it. If it sucks, the worse it sucks, the better, and we just do it. Or if you can't hack it, get out. We can't do that anymore, right? It's just not gonna fly. And I think you've you've had to see the services maybe, I mean, they're maybe not there yet, but there are obviously a lot of discussions now about what can we do to support the families, give more stability, provide. They need to be treated like, I mean, people that have like they're not just commodities like to be like moved around. It's like, hey, you really have to invest in their families to keep the Marine happy, which therefore makes the Marine Corps better, right? I think it's just the building block of it. And in the past, that was most often not the case. I mean, I think that's pretty fair to say.
Well, no, I mean, we've all heard it, right? If the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you one.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, gone are those days, thank God. But no, now the saying is, and I've heard it from several senior leaders, including the commandant, most notably the commandant. So from the top down, we recruit the Marine, but we retain the family. That's it. And that's where Lieutenant General Schrody was coming from. And exactly what you said. And here's the hard part, right? Everything's a priority. Everything's a priority. But I can't speak for the other services, but everything can't be a priority when it comes to budgeting. And as you know, the Marine Corps is in the middle of modernization and it's expensive. And with the budgets and the new, everything change, all of the new changes. So you can say families are a priority and they can be in your heart,
Right.
stay on your budget. And this is, I'm not being critical. The new technology development and experimentation and acquisition, it's expensive and it's required. And that has to be, we're fighting, that has to be the number. And frankly, with my husband as an infantry officer, I want it to be the number one investment because I would like for him and his Marines to have an unfair fight, as the commandant says, to their advantage against the adversaries in the future. So I'm okay with, having us be a priority in your heart and maybe a little bit further down on the budget. But then that means it's incumbent upon the associations, the community members, the other folks that support the Marine Corps and the other services to then rally around and say, okay, how can we do our share? And I'll tell you, there are some phenomenal organizations out there that support military families. Really, some really, really good ones that we partner with, that support us, that we support them. It's great. So.
And I guess this is a great chance for you to talk about some of that too, because again, I think people don't necessarily have an understanding of what the Marine Corps Association is doing now, and what it has become beyond the professional magazines of the Marine Corps. I mean, what programs would you like to highlight that people may not know about now, and probably because they're pretty new, or what you're investing in now? And I love the fact that it's a great breakdown that the Marine Corps is going to invest in priorities, yeah, families, right, but the opportunity comes for the Marine Corps associations, all the support functionality out there to be able to pick up the slack, to do those things and fill in the gaps that the big Marine Corps, hey, budget cuts come, but somebody else can cover that down on the other things. So Marine Corps Association ain't buying weapons. They can invest on the actual families and things like that, right? So I love to
That's
hear some of those
exactly
programs.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, our mantra is we support the Marine Corps where the Marine Corps cannot do for themselves. Right. So, and a lot of times that's funding and resources for programs like Behind the Camouflage. And soon you'll see us, I can't let too much out of the bag, but it's still in development. Beyond the Camouflage will be our program for post-service Marines and retirees and veterans. We're really excited about that. But yeah, so there's two. I do want to talk about Behind the Camouflage. That is our newest program in direct support of Marine Corps spouses and their families. And we have 6 swim lanes. We like to say 6 lines of effort. A podcast, which yeah, you came on our podcast, Beau, right?
Not yet. No.
Okay, well, I don't know why we didn't do that yet. So you're going to be
All right.
because we do have offline. We do
All
have
right. Good.
offline. But we have a podcast, we travel the Marine Corps, and we host spouse summits where we help create community and connection to resources. We have chronicles, we have a blog that really seeks to inspire spouses and give them a place where they can realize they're not the only one through this. We have a website of resources and a repository of essentially places where spouses can come and a one-stop shop for many of the things that they're looking for, which is where we house Upline. which has been awesome. Really, really cool tool. And then I don't know if that's all six. Oh, we do awards. We're getting ready. This is a really cool one. We are awarding spouses for excellence in community building and change making. So, in fact, nominations close soon, and not quite sure when this podcast will hit. But great selection committee. Mrs. Smith, the spouse of the commandant's on the committee. Mrs. Ruiz is on the committee. Really phenomenal spouse leaders will be choosing these deserving spouses for the awards, and we'll announce them. We'll fly them to DC and celebrate them at our annual meeting on December 4th, which is really cool. And then we do some advocacy. So when we move around, when we go from summit to summit and from force location, we're on the ground, we're boots on the ground. And so through Lieutenant General Schroede and our connections with the senior spouse leaders, we do some advocating, not big A advocating on the Hill, but, we'll hear about some challenges in Okinawa and we'll help communicate those to Headquarters Marine Corps. Or, one of the things, I'll give you an example. Well, the PCS advocacy is one, but also, MCCS, they get a bad name. And if Ed Cutshall is listening, we love MCCS, but we joke about the old days. I'm sure you've heard it being described as the Marine Corps Crime Syndicate. And what are they? They're ripping us off. But really, truly, it's a great organization. And they do wonderful things for Marine sailors and their families on our installations. But they might not know all of the concerns of the families on the installations and vice versa. And the families might not know all of the things that the MCCS can do for them. So we try to act as that link between the two. So anyways, those are the 6 swim lanes. We've been having a great time supporting spouses, growing our community. We're on social media, giving support, getting feedback. It's been a lot of fun.
It's great. And certainly it's being in the veteran hiring space and the military veteran and the veteran and military spouse hiring space. It's interesting, trying to engage military spouses can be challenging, I think, for companies because they don't always speak the same language or don't operate in the same places that spouses do. Spouses actually talk more in like these groups and different things than guys do. It's just a very different, I think, the military spouse community in general, the civilian sector hasn't done a very good job of figuring out how to reach the military spouse community very well. Because I think if the word gets out amongst spouses that somebody's doing a good job, it will spread like wildfire. Because again, I think spouses are very good at sharing information very quickly when they find resources that can be utilized to help fellow spouses. But I don't think anyone's done a perfect job by any means, or there's work to be done from, I think, the civilian community to understand what spouses bring to the table. And certainly even inside the military to get the word out of what spouses are doing and share those best practices. But love to see that MCA is not only involved in that, but being, and certainly leading the way in that and getting that word out there, bringing the community together and letting those voices be heard. There's some amazing spouses in the community. It's such an underutilized resource is our military spouse community, and find ways to leverage that community to make the entire military better is just it's been a miss for a long time, and a lot of work to be done there. I think it's probably some quick wins that could happen to make some big victories, to make the whole force just so much better.
I agree so much with all of the things you just said. We're getting better. So, right, we're getting better about communicating with military spouses. I think, and it's not just a top down or a bottom up, it's kind of a both. We got to come at it from both. I think LinkedIn is really helping military spouses. The Military Spouse Employment Program is also really helping. That's a Department of Defense wide employment program that's really incredible. One of the things that I like most about MSEP is that what you said earlier, Beau, about informing the employers and helping spouses. So this is one of the things I really love about helping employers realize the benefits of a military spouse that are unique to a military spouse. Our flexibility, our adaptability, our ingenuity. We can be aggressive. We get to a place and we got to get going. We've got 2 to 3 years to get settled in. We've got kids to settle in, dogs to unpack and get fine. We know how to get stuff done, but also we have some pretty significant challenges. And so if employers could understand that and help accommodate, like Lieutenant General Schroede did for me, imagine the talent pool you'd be able to select from if you could make just little things like PCS leave. Beau, I just moved. I don't remember it being this painful. It was painful. And not because of the movers were great, but just trying to work. It's been a long time since I've worked full time and had to PCS, and it was a significant amount of stress and anxiety. And if employers could just say, "You know what? Take 2 weeks, not of your vacation, not of your sick or personal leave, take 2 weeks, and then that's my investment in you." How great would that be to give that gift to military spouses? And or be the other thing, not only PCS leave, but the ability or the willingness to make a position remote. Thanks to COVID, we're finding that you can do a lot of things from the comfort of your own home. Again, we got orders and in very last minute orders. And so he really kind of had to decide whether he wanted to kick me to the curb or just say, we're going to be a little unconventional. And, so thanks to his openness, I'm still working for the association, and I will work for the association for a long time. I'll be loyal to them because they were very loyal to me.
I think that's such a key point is that I found certainly at Amazon when we would hire military spouses, they were so appreciative of the opportunity that they do work harder. They're amazingly loyal. The military spouse network we had at Amazon, they had their own affinity group at Amazon. Like we had enough of them that they could get together and they had their own swag and their own stuff and they wanted to do different things than the military guys did. So, but it was super cool to see that. They were just thankful for the opportunity because I know you've seen it so many times, even more than me probably, that it's not even the lack of employment, it's underemployment. It's that we have these amazing spouses that have, master's degrees and they're in 29 Palms and they're working at, Starbucks. Is the frustration from the spouses that of underemployment and not being able to utilize the skills they have. How do we, MCA, the Marine Corps, employers in general, find a way to tap into those skills that are there that we just aren't being utilized? They're just sitting there dormant. There's just so much potential that is under like a volcano, right? It's under the surface, ready to explode. But how do you get that catalyst to get it going? I think some of the programs you're doing or starting with MCA have that ability to bring that energy and the power of that. How do you unlock that and provide the conditions for them to be able to utilize that is really, I think, a huge part of unlocking.
Marine Corps Association's in a really unique position to help do that. The Marine Corps itself is recognizing, again, back to what we were talking about, and General Smith saying he retains the family. Manpower and Reserve Affairs are doing wonderful things with technology in having the ability to collect a lot of personal information about the Marines' family and desires. Farrell Sullivan has a senior in high school in 2 years. So, and his spouse is working for the Marine Corps Association. And, all of these things get plugged in. But when the monitor can bring that up and say, oh, maybe we shouldn't move Sully next year. Maybe we should try and stabilize him for the next, whatever. Now, the needs of the Marine Corps will always come first, of course. But the Marine Corps has made a really big in being informed of the personal situations and doing what they can. But that's reliant on Marines and spouses knowing they can give that information to the monitors, right? So and this is my point about the Marine Corps Association. We can help communicate to families and Marines, again, where the Marine Corps may struggle getting the word out. So at these summits, we bring in resources and we bring in senior leaders and we talk about what's important. Or we talk about it on our podcast, or so it's, yes, I think together it takes a village to get a Marine Corps family through the pipeline, through a career. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is, and you mentioned a little bit, but back to informing or educating employers and underemployment. Some duty stations, right? So it's really important for spouses to understand that they can do this. They don't have to, they can try and come in and out of their careers. And what I mean is, of course, we talked about it. It was easier for me because I was a reservist, but some duty stations are just going to be harder for employment, right? Either because of availability or because of what the Marine is doing. The deployment schedule's high. Maybe you have young children. It's a lot easier for me to work full time now that my children are in high school. But when I had 4 kids under 6, that was
Yeah.
a whole nother story. So teaching employers how to, to feel comfortable with gaps in resumes potentially, and then teaching spouses to soften the edges on those gaps by looking, to put their volunteer skills in their resumes and just to give them confidence to step back into the workforce. Because if I had a dollar bill for every time I had a spouse friend that was just not confident enough to submit a resume, I'd be in Tahiti right now. But anyways, I think we're all of that to say is we're making progress, but we do have a ways to go.
Yeah, I love it, and I think you're spot on. I mean, it's definitely better than it was 10 years ago, but there's
Yes.
still a lot of growth to be done out there, little opportunities to tap into the amazing resource that military spouses are and to fully leverage what they bring to the table, which hasn't happened yet. I love to hear that the Marine Corps, I mean, again, I assume all the services, but are considering things like, you have kids at this age that your spouse works, and to even the fact that even that's even a thought is hard
Yeah.
for me to believe. 'Cause I only retired 10 years ago, and that was never a consideration. So that's just, it's great to hear it. It's needed. Obviously, you hear about the challenge of recruiting these days. I mean, the Marine Corps certainly been better, but for the services, I mean, if you want retain your people and you don't have to recruit as many people. So to do that, especially when you're a junior, you're a lieutenant and a captain, why do you have to PCS every 3 years? You shouldn't. It's just how we've always done it, but doesn't mean it's the right way. I know there's a lot of talk about being able to let people homestead now more and be able to stay around for 6, 8, 10 years, if depending on what your job is and what you're doing. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And that's just because, oh, it's time, 3 years, got to go, right? No, you don't have to. You really don't. So it's interesting to see all that play out, but good stuff.
Excited to see how the next several years with some changes in quality of life that the commandant has talked about and that manpower and reserve affairs in terms of assignments. And then, of course, DOD wide, there's talk about homesteading too. So it'll be really interesting next few years.
No doubt about it. But what's the best way if people want to learn more about MCA? What's the best way to engage or learn more about all the great things that the Marine Corps Association is doing these days?
Definitely our website, mca-marines.org. So mca-marines.org. We have a podcast, which is actually really interesting. It's a great podcast. They're great. Scuttlebutt podcast is for the association writ large. The Behind the Camouflage podcast, of course. And we're all over social media. So we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. But yes, on our website, Bo, we used to do about 10 to 14 events a year, these dinners, these professional dinners. Now we're doing 22 events around the Marine Corps. We're doing mental health stuff. We're doing professional leaders conferences. We're doing stuff like generational leadership for Marines and trauma-informed leadership. So we've got a lot of great stuff going on. Of course, we have all of the standards, right? You can always call us and we'll give you library books or the Commandant's reading list. That's still a thing. You can give us a call and we'll help you do a battlefield study. Get onto our website and use the PME tools that we have. And one of the things, I'm going to say it, is get on and use Opline. If you're transitioning or if you're looking for employment, if you're a spouse or a military connected kid or a service member, I am blown away, Bo, by how amazing a tool Opline is. And we've had some really great success stories at the association from members using Opline and getting them headed in the right direction for employment. So that's exciting. Cool, easy to use. I mean, it's so intuitive. It's really great. We're excited. We're proud to partner with Opline because it's such an important tool.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Thank you for the plug. I really appreciate it. It's so easy a Marine can use it. We've proven that. That's good.
I didn't want to say it, but okay, I'll say it. It's so easy a Marine can use it.
Before we close out, I want you to tell an embarrassing story about yourself, about your Marine Corps marathon prowess.
My Marine Corps marathon prowess.
Did you run the Marine Corps marathon?
I did, but the embarrassing story really highlights the prowess of so I married into a rock star family. In fact, I married while I was an instructor at the basic school, and I kept my name for a little while until we had kids. But all of my peers at the basic school told me I wasn't allowed to take the Sullivan name until I proved that I could serve faithfully and not tarnish the Sullivan name. So anyways, but I did. I married into a bunch of rock stars. In fact, my sister-in-law, Mary Kate, is an elite level marathoner. So the year I decided to run the marathon with my then fiance, Earl, I set a modest goal of 4 hours. That's respectable. I think 4 hours
100%.
I made it I made it. It was like 4:01. So I was very, very proud of myself. But it was my sister-in-law who had my niece, let's see, 6 weeks earlier, who like I can't even say she passed me at mile 20 because I was never in front of her. She finished the marathon in 3 hours and like 26 minutes, 6 weeks postpartum, and I think circled back to like run in with us and cheer us on. And I just, I'm like, yeah, but yes, so it's funny. And the entire time, the other funny part of that, it almost caused me not to get married and you'll appreciate this too. We're warming up and, Farrell could have run faster, but we agreed that as like a bonding exercise, we're going to run together. We had trained together. And so we show up and I handed him my fanny pack and we had never run with that before. We had never trained with that, but I certainly didn't want to carry it for 4 hours. And so I just handed it over to him and he picked it up and said, "What is this?" I said, "It's my fanny pack. Will you carry it?" And he did. So I knew he was the one. I knew he
When
was
he
the one.
held the fanny pack, that's a win. I love it. I thought my Marine Corps marathon days were over, but my daughter, who recently got married, is running her first marathon, not Marine Corps, but this October. And I said, if you do finish that marathon, I will run the Marine Corps marathon with you the year after. I'm encouraging her to be successful, but then I really have to step myself up. It'll be truly a year-long program to get back at it. It's been a while, but we'll see. It's all right.
What is it about Marines being glutton for punishment? I don't know.
We can't help ourselves. It's one of those things. One of those things. Well, hey, Marta, thanks so much for being with us today. I
It was a
really
lot of
appreciate
fun.
all your insights. I love what the Marine Corps Association is doing these days, and General Schiroti is crushing it. And I think his vision is just ahead of its time, or where we should have been maybe before. But he's really leading from the front on all these programs. And again, excited to see what you're doing. Excited for your new PCS, and excited that we're partnered with you with Opline and MCA, and wish you the best moving forward. Thanks again for the time.
Thanks, Bo. Take care.